The executive building of Morrison Manufacturing had been in our family for 37 years. My grandfather built it from a single machine shop into a multi-state operation producing precision components for the aerospace industry. Walking through the lobby, past the portrait of him in his work coveralls, I always felt the weight of that history. Today I felt something different. "You're late," my brother Derek said as I entered the conference room on the third floor. He didn't look up from his tablet, his tailored suit immaculate, his hair perfectly styled in that way that suggested he spent more time on it than I spent on my entire morning routine. "Traffic was bad," I said, taking a seat at the far end of the table. The chair wobbled slightly, a detail nobody had bothered to fix despite my mentioning it at the last family meeting 6 months ago. "We're about to start," my sister Jennifer said, her tone suggesting I should be grateful for the notification. She sat beside our mother at the head of the table, both of them wearing matching designer blazers like some kind of corporate uniform. My mother, Patricia Morrison Reed, looked at me with that expression I'd seen countless times over the past 28 years. The look that said I was there out of obligation, not necessity. The look that reminded me I was adopted, that I wasn't really part of the legacy even though the family name was technically mine. "Now that everyone's here," Mom said, emphasizing the word everyone with just enough edge to make her point clear, "we can discuss the acquisition offer from Tecton Industries." Around the table sat the key players in what my family considered their empire. My stepfather Richard, who'd married into the business 12 years ago and acted like he'd built it himself. My uncle James, my mother's brother, who handled operations. My aunt Carol, who ran human resources. And of course, Derek and Jennifer, the golden children who'd been groomed for leadership since birth. Then there was me. The outsider they kept around because removing me would look bad. "Tecton has offered $420 million for full acquisition," Derek said, pulling up a presentation on the screen. "The deal includes retention packages for key leadership and a 5-year consulting arrangement for family members." Jennifer leaned forward, her enthusiasm obvious. "This is exactly what we've been waiting for. A major tech firm wants our manufacturing capabilities. We'd be part of something huge. The valuation is strong," my uncle James added. 20% above market rate for similar manufacturing operations. They're paying a premium for our aerospace certifications and client relationships. "I've already spoken with our attorneys," my stepfather Richard said. "The deal structure is solid. We can close within 90 days if we move quickly." Mom smiled, the kind of smile that came with champagne and celebration plans. "This represents everything Dad worked for. A legacy that extends beyond our family into the future of advanced manufacturing." I listened quietly, watching the presentation slides change. Revenue projections. Integration timelines. Retention bonuses for executives. It was all very professional, very polished. It was also incomplete. "The board has already given preliminary approval," Derek continued. "We just need family consensus to move forward with the formal acceptance." "Family consensus," I said, speaking for the first time since entering the room. Everyone looked at me as if they'd forgotten I could talk. "Yes, Adrian," Mom said with exaggerated patience. "We make major decisions as a family. That's how Dad wanted it." "Even though I'm not really family," I said. The room went silent. Jennifer's expression tightened. Derek looked uncomfortable. My Aunt Carol suddenly found her phone fascinating. "That's not what I said," Mom replied, her voice cooling several degrees. "But there's a difference between being legally part of this family and understanding the business. Between having your name on the papers and having actually contributed to building something." "I see," I said. "You work in quality control," Richard said as if explaining something to a child. "That's important work, but it's not strategic. You don't have the background to evaluate a $400 million acquisition." "I've been here 7 years," I said. "In quality control," Jennifer repeated. "Checking measurements and reviewing inspection reports. That's not the same as managing client relationships or understanding market dynamics." "We're not trying to exclude you," my Uncle James said, though his tone suggested exactly that. "We just want to make the decision efficiently, without unnecessary complications." I nodded slowly. "And by family consensus you mean everyone in this room agrees?" "That's right," Mom said. "Everyone who's actually involved in running the company. The real decision makers." Only real family makes decisions here, she added, looking directly at me. She stood and closed the office door, as if that would somehow make her next words more authoritative. People who've earned their place through contribution, not just through paperwork. Derek smirked. Jennifer's expression matched his. I nodded quietly, accepting the dismissal for what it was. My mother's phone rang, the sharp sound cutting through the suddenly tense atmosphere. She glanced at the screen, irritated. It's David Chin, our CEO. I should take this. She answered, putting the phone on speaker. David, we're in the middle of the family meeting about the Tecton acquisition. Can this wait? David Chen's voice came through clearly, professional but strained. I'm afraid it can't, Patricia. We have a significant problem with the acquisition. Mom's expression shifted from irritated to concerned. What kind of problem? I just received notification from our corporate attorneys that the Tecton merger has been rejected by our majority stakeholder. The deal cannot proceed without their approval, and they've formally declined to grant it. The room went absolutely still. That's impossible, Derek said. We are the majority stakeholders. The family owns 78% of the company. That information is incorrect, David said carefully. Or rather, it's outdated. Your family collectively owns 29% of Morrison Manufacturing. The majority stake is held by a separate entity. My mother's keys, which she'd been holding, dropped onto the table with a metallic clatter. What are you talking about? We own this company. My father built it. We've always been majority owners. That was true until approximately 5 years ago, David said. At that time, a private investment firm called Axiom Holdings began purchasing shares through various private transactions. The purchases were all properly documented and filed with the corporate records, but they were structured in a way that didn't trigger consolidated reporting requirements. Richard grabbed the phone. Who owns Axiom Holdings? There was a pause on the other end. When David spoke again, his voice was even more careful. That information is contained in the corporate filings, but I think it would be better if we discuss this in person. I can be there in 20 minutes. Tell us now, Mom demanded, her composure starting to crack. Another pause. Axiom Holdings is wholly owned by Adrian Morrison Reed. The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the air conditioning humming through the vents. Derek stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. That's insane. Adrian doesn't have that kind of money. Where would he get the capital to buy 50% of a manufacturing company? 71%, David corrected quietly. Axiom Holdings currently owns 71% of Morrison Manufacturing. Jennifer's face had gone pale. This is a mistake. Some kind of clerical error. It's not an error, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. It's accurate. I own 71% of the company through Axiom Holdings. I've owned majority control for 3 years now. My mother sat down slowly as if her legs wouldn't support her anymore. How? Grandfather's trust, I said. When he died, he left equal trusts to all his grandchildren. Derek got one, Jennifer got one, and I got one. They matured when we each turned 25. That trust was $2 million, Derek said. You can't buy 71% of this company with $2 million. You're right, I said. But $2 million can be invested. Can be grown. Grandfather set up my trust differently than yours. Yours were liquid assets, immediately accessible when you turned 25. Mine was invested in a growth portfolio managed by his personal financial advisor, with instructions that it couldn't be touched until I was 25, and then only for securing my future in the family business. I pulled out my own tablet and connected it to the conference room display. Financial documents appeared on the screen. By the time I turned 25, that trust had grown to $42 million. I used it as collateral to secure loans, which I used to begin purchasing shares in the company. Every purchase was legal, properly documented, and filed with the corporate records. Why didn't we know about this? My Uncle James demanded. Because nobody looked, I said simply. Every transaction was in the public corporate filings. Every share purchase was documented. Every change in ownership structure was recorded properly. You just never thought to check who was buying because you assumed nobody outside the family would be interested in acquiring shares. You lied to us, Jennifer said, her voice rising. You've been pretending to be some low-level quality control worker while secretly buying the company out from under us? I didn't lie about anything, I said. I do work in quality control. I've been there for 7 years, learning every aspect of how this company operates. What products we make, which clients we serve, where our processes work and where they fail. I never pretended to be anything other than what I am. Mom found her voice, though it came out strained. You deliberately deceived us. Working in that department, acting like you were just another employee. I am an employee, I said. I'm also the majority owner. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Richard pointed at the financial documents still displayed on the screen. Where did you get the money for the loans? 42 million wouldn't be enough to acquire 71% of this company. You're right, I said. Which is why I didn't acquire it all at once. I bought shares gradually over 5 years. As the company grew and the share value increased, I used the appreciation in my existing holdings as collateral for additional loans. Each purchase increased my ownership stake, which increased my collateral capacity, which enabled larger purchases. I switched slides showing the timeline of acquisitions. 5 years ago I owned 0%. 4 years ago 12%. 3 years ago 34%. 2 years ago 53%. Now 71%. The family sold you those shares? My Aunt Carol asked, speaking for the first time. Some of them, I said. Derek sold me 8% 3 years ago to fund his venture capital investments. Jennifer sold me 6% 2 years ago for her real estate projects. Uncle James sold me 4%. Aunt Carol sold me 3%. Various other minority shareholders sold me their stakes over time. Derek's face had turned red. You manipulated us. You knew we needed capital for other investments. I made fair offers for shares you were willing to sell, I said. Every transaction was at market rate or above. You all made money on the sales. You just didn't bother to ask why I was buying because you didn't think it mattered. Because we didn't think you'd be stupid enough to sink all your money into this company, Jennifer snapped. It wasn't stupid, I said calmly. Morrison Manufacturing is a well-run, profitable company with strong client relationships and solid growth prospects. It was a smart investment. The fact that you all viewed it as something to cash out of when you wanted money for other projects tells me you didn't value what we have here. My mother's hands were shaking as she reached for her water glass. So you've been sitting on majority control waiting for what? This exact moment? To sabotage a major acquisition. I haven't sabotaged anything, I said. I rejected a merger that wasn't in the company's best interests. $420 million isn't in our best interests? Richard said incredulously. No, I said. It's not. And I can prove it. I changed slides again, showing a detailed analysis. Tecton's offer values us at $420 million. That sounds impressive until you look at the actual numbers. Our annual revenue is $183 million. Our profit margin is 18%, which gives us $33 million in annual profit. At current aerospace industry multiples, we should be valued at least 15 times earnings. That's $495 million. Derek leaned forward. That's only a $75 million difference. Within normal valuation ranges. Except Tecton's offer includes integration costs that we'd be responsible for, I continued. Facility upgrades, system consolidations, workforce adjustments. Those costs total $82 million over the first 3 years, which effectively reduces the purchase price to $338 million. The room had gone quiet again, but this time people were actually paying attention to what I was saying. Furthermore, I said, Tecton's retention packages for key leadership total $42 million over 5 years. But those packages only go to corporate officers, not to working employees. The people who actually make our products, who maintain client relationships, who ensure quality standards, they get nothing except the uncertainty of new ownership. I switched to another slide. Most significantly, Tecton's integration plan calls for consolidating our 3 manufacturing facilities into 2 within 18 months. That means closing the Ohio plant, which employs 347 people. People who've worked for this company for decades in some cases. People who've built their lives around these jobs. My Aunt Carol looked uncomfortable. Corporate consolidation is normal in acquisitions. It's how companies achieve efficiency. It's also how companies destroy the culture and expertise that made them valuable in the first place, I said. Our Ohio facility has the highest quality ratings of all our plants. It has the most experienced workforce. It has the longest client relationships. Closing it would save money on paper while destroying institutional knowledge that took decades to build. You're being sentimental, Mom said, but her voice lacked its earlier certainty. I'm being practical, I said. I've worked in quality control for 7 years. I've visited every facility multiple times. I've talked to the workers on the floor, the supervisors, the technicians. I know which plants are genuinely efficient and which ones just look good on spreadsheets. The Ohio plant is the heart of our operation, and Tecton wants to cut it out because it doesn't fit their geographic strategy. Jennifer crossed her arms. So you're rejecting a $400 million deal because you're worried about a plant closure? That's emotional, not strategic. I'm rejecting an undervalued deal that would harm the company's long-term prospects while enriching executives at the expense of workers, I said. That's not emotional. That's understanding what actually makes this company valuable. David Chen's voice came through the phone again. We'd forgotten he was still on the line. If I may add something, Patricia. Adrian has been raising these concerns with me for the past 6 months. He's requested detailed operational analyses, client retention studies and workforce impact assessments. His objections to the Tecton deal are well documented and thoroughly researched. Mom stared at the phone. You've been discussing this with Adrian? Behind our backs. I've been discussing it with your majority shareholder, David said carefully. As the CEO, I have a fiduciary duty to keep the principal owner informed of major corporate actions. Adrian has that right. We're the family, Richard said, his voice tight. We're supposed to make these decisions together. With respect, David said, family sentiment doesn't override corporate governance. Adrian owns 71% of the company. His approval is legally required for any major transaction. That's not optional. Derek stood up, pacing now. This is insane. You can't just reject the deal because you think the valuation is low. Tecton isn't going to negotiate. This is their final offer. Then they can keep it, I said. Morrison Manufacturing isn't for sale at that price. You're costing us millions, Jennifer said, her voice rising to almost a shout. This is the opportunity of a lifetime and you're throwing it away because of what? Pride? Some misguided loyalty to factory workers. I'm protecting the company, I said. And yes, I'm protecting the workers who actually make it function. The people you've never bothered to meet or talk to because you were too busy having lunch meetings and attending industry conferences. My mother stood up, her composure finally cracking completely. How dare you? I built this company with your grandfather. I've given my life to this business. And you, adopted out of charity when you were 3 years old, have the audacity to tell me I don't care about it. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. There it is, I said quietly. Adopted out of charity. Not real family. Not someone who actually belongs here. That's not what I meant, Mom said, but her face showed she knew exactly what she'd meant. It's exactly what you meant, I said. It's what you've all meant for 25 years. I'm the outsider. The one who doesn't really belong. The one who should be grateful to even be in the room. I stood up, gathering my tablet. Well, here's the reality. I'm the majority owner of this company. I have been for 3 years. Every major decision made in that time should have had my approval. Want to know how many times you consulted me? 0. How many board meetings I was invited to? 0. How many strategic planning sessions included me? 0. Because you worked in quality control, Derek said desperately. You never indicated you wanted to be involved in management. I own 71% of the company, I said, letting the words hang heavy. My involvement isn't optional. It's legally required. But you all were so convinced I was insignificant that you never bothered to check the corporate ownership records. Never bothered to ask why I was buying shares. Never bothered to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the adopted kid might actually be building something. My Uncle James cleared his throat. What happens now? Now, I said, we're going to restructure how this company is run. David, I need you to schedule a formal board meeting for tomorrow morning. Full board attendance required. Understood, David said through the phone. You can't restructure the board, Richard said. We have voting rights. You have voting rights on your 29% of the shares, I said. I have voting rights on my 71%. The math isn't complicated. Mom sank back into her chair. You're going to take over the company. Push us out. I'm going to ensure the company is run properly, I said. Whether that includes you depends on whether you can accept that I'm actually in charge. That I'm not just the adopted kid you keep around out of obligation. This is because we didn't treat you like family? Jennifer said. You're destroying our legacy out of spite? I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm protecting the legacy grandfather built. The one he trusted me enough to give me the resources to preserve. He knew exactly what he was doing when he structured my trust differently than yours. He wanted someone who would value the company itself, not just what it could be sold for. I walked toward the door then paused. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I expect everyone to attend. We'll be discussing management restructuring, operational priorities, and the company's direction going forward. Come prepared to actually listen for once. I left the conference room and walked down the hallway, past the executive offices with their mahogany furniture and expensive art. Past the reception area where Linda had worked for 20 years and always remembered to ask about my day. Past the break room where I'd had lunch with the third shift supervisors and learned more about our operations than a dozen strategic planning meetings could teach. My phone started ringing before I reached the elevator. Mom's number. Then Derek's. Then Jennifer's. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I called Marcus Howell, the attorney who'd been helping me structure the Axiom Holdings acquisitions for the past 5 years. He answered on the second ring. Adrian, I assume they found out? David Chin told them on a conference call, I said. It went about as well as expected. Do you need me there for the board meeting tomorrow? Yes, I said. Bring all the corporate governance documents. Articles of incorporation, bylaws, shareholder agreements. I want everything crystal clear. Understood. For what it's worth, you handled this correctly. The Tecton deal was undervalued and the operational impacts would have been severe. Tell that to my family, I said. They're not going to see it that way for a while, Marcus said. But you did the right thing. Your grandfather would be proud. I hung up and stepped into the elevator. My reflection in the polished doors showed a man in work clothes. Jeans, a company polo shirt, safety boots. I looked like exactly what I was. Someone who'd spent 7 years on factory floors learning how things actually worked. But I was also the majority owner of a $183 million a year manufacturing company. Those two things weren't contradictory. They were complementary. The elevator reached the ground floor and I walked out into the lobby. Past grandfather's portrait. He was smiling in the picture, wearing his coveralls, standing in front of the original machine shop. A man who built something real, something lasting. I stopped and looked at the portrait for a long moment. I hope you knew what you were doing, I said quietly. Trusting me with this. My phone buzzed with a text from David Chin. Boardroom reserved for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Full board confirmed attendance. IT has prepared all the corporate records you requested. We'll have them ready by 8 a.m. I texted back. Thank you. See you then. Another text came through, this time from Jennifer. We need to talk about this. You're making a huge mistake. The family built this company. You can't just take it over. I typed a response. The family sold me 71% of the company. I didn't take anything. You gave it to me because you needed money for other investments. Those were your choices, not mine. Her response was immediate. We didn't know you were trying to take control. I wasn't trying to take control, I wrote back. I was investing in the company grandfather built. The fact that you saw that as a threat instead of a commitment tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. I put my phone away and walked out to the parking lot. My truck was parked in the employee section, between Carlos from machining and Jennifer from assembly. Not in the executive spots near the building entrance where Mom's Mercedes and Derek's BMW sat like symbols of status. Tomorrow that would change. Tomorrow I'd park wherever I wanted because I owned the parking lot. I owned the building. I owned the company. But tonight, I drove home to my modest apartment, the one I'd been renting for 7 years while my siblings bought houses and my parents remodeled their estate. The apartment where I'd spent countless evenings reviewing financial statements and corporate records, learning everything I could about the business I was building a stake in. The apartment where I'd planned for exactly this moment. My phone rang again. This time it was my Uncle James. I answered. Adrian, he said, his voice tired. I owe you an apology. I was surprised enough to pause before responding. Go on. I sold you those shares 3 years ago because I needed capital for a real estate investment. I thought I was just liquidating a small part of my holdings to someone who'd overpay for them. I didn't realize you were building a position. I should have asked questions. Would it have changed anything? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. Probably not. But I would have treated you differently if I'd known. These past few years, the way we've excluded you from decisions, the way Patricia talks about you not being real family, I should have said something. Why didn't you? Because it was easier not to, he said honestly. Because challenging Patricia means conflict and I avoided that. I'm sorry. Apology noted, I said. See you at the board meeting tomorrow. Adrian, one more thing. That Ohio plant you mentioned. I've been pushing to keep it open for 2 years. The efficiency studies all show it's our best facility. But Patricia and Derek kept insisting we needed to consolidate for cost savings. Did you tell them the quality data? Multiple times. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted the narrative of streamlining operations for the Tecton deal. Tomorrow we're going to have a very different conversation about operations, I said. One based on actual data instead of what makes for good press releases. After we hung up, I sat in my truck in the apartment parking lot for a long time, thinking about what came next. The board meeting tomorrow would be contentious. Mom would fight the restructuring. Derek and Jennifer would try to find legal challenges. Richard would make threats. But none of it would matter because I held 71% of the voting shares. The math was simple even if the emotions were complicated. My phone buzzed with one more message, this time from David Chin. FI, Tecton just called. He heard their deal was rejected. He's not happy. Be prepared for them to go public with their disappointment. I texted back, let them. Anyone who does their research will see we rejected an undervalued offer. That's good business, not bad judgment. I looked up at my apartment building at the modest windows of my second-floor unit. Tomorrow I could afford to live anywhere. A mansion like my mother's. A penthouse like Derek wanted. Anything I wanted. But I'd stay right here in this apartment, because moving wasn't about money or status. It was about remembering where I started. About staying connected to reality instead of getting lost in executive office symbolism. My grandfather had worn coveralls to work every day, even after the company was worth millions. He ate lunch with the workers. He knew their names, their families, their concerns. I was his grandson in the ways that mattered, even if some of the DNA wasn't shared. And tomorrow, I'd start proving that the adopted kid they'd dismissed as insignificant understood the business better than any of them ever had. The real family, my mother had said, made the decisions. She was right about that. She just hadn't realized I was the real family all along.